We can solve polynomial equations by factoring, and we just have to make the equation equal to 0, and we're going to use the zero product property that we used when we were solving quadratic equations. So I'm going to start by factoring this. We're going to look for the common factor. Well, the common factor is going to be 2x to the fourth. So then inside of the parentheses is going to be x squared minus 5x minus 6. And then we're going to make this equal to 0. And then we can factor this. So basically we're looking for factors of negative 6. The sum is negative 5. So I know that it's going to be a positive and a negative because that's the only way that I can have a negative here. So it's going to be 1 and negative 6. Because 1 times negative 6 gives me a negative 6, and 1 minus 6 gives me a negative 5. And then I'm going to make this equal to 0. Again, using the zero product property, I can make each one of these factors equal to 0. So it will be 2x to the fourth equals 0. Then x plus 1 equals 0. And x minus 6 equals 0. And then we solve for x in each one of them. Well, on this one, if I divide both sides by 2, then I'm going to have x to the fourth equals 0. And x to the fourth is the same thing as having x times x times x times x, like 4 x's. So basically it's x equals 0, and but 4 times. 4 times. And on this one it will be x equals negative 1, and on this one it will be x equals 6. So the number of solutions that we have is 1, 2, and then plus this 4, 6. When you look at the polynomial, if you look at the degree of the polynomial, that is the number of solutions that you're going to have. So in this case, the degree of the polynomial is 6, so we have 6 solutions. Granted, some of the solutions are coming up more than once. In this case, the 0 is coming up 4 times, so that is called multiplicity. So it is said that it has x equals 0 with a multiplicity of 4. Then we also have negative 1 as one of the roots or as one of the solutions with a multiplicity of 1, and this one is 6 with a multiplicity of 1. Let's take a look at another example. We're going to do x cubed minus 2x squared minus 25x equals negative 50. Well, if I'm going to factor a polynomial, I have to make it equal to 0. So the first thing is to add 50 to both sides, so the polynomial can be 0. So negative 2x squared minus 25x plus 50. Now, I have 4 terms. So since I have 4 terms, I'm just going to use factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 and then the last 2. So I'll have x cubed minus 2x squared, this in parentheses, plus negative 25x plus 50 equals 0. Now the common factor amongst these two is x squared, so that's what I'm going to factor out. And inside of the parentheses, I'm going to have x minus 2. Now the common factor amongst these two is going to be negative 25. Negative 25. So then inside of the parentheses is going to be x minus 2. And several of you had questions about this last class, and you were confused with the signs. Well, remember, if you were to multiply this, again, if you were to distribute it, you are supposed to get the original one. So negative 25 times x gives you negative 25x, and negative 25 times negative 2 gives you the 50. If this one was positive, negative 25 times 2 would have given you a negative 50, and that is not what you have. So again, you have to be careful with the signs. Now we have 2 terms. Okay, we have this term, and we have this other term. So we're going to look at what's common between them. Well, both of them have an x minus 2, so that's what I'm going to factor out, x minus 2. And after I factor the x minus 2 out, I'm going to end up with x squared minus 25. Now, if you notice, x squared minus 25 is the difference of squares, so I can still factor that, and that is going to be x minus 2, x plus 5, x minus 5. I know I'm going kind of fast on this, but we've gone through this, so I'm hoping that you already know how to factor. So now I'm going to make each one of them equal to 0 so I can find the value of x. Since this polynomial has a degree of 3, that means that I'm going to have 3 solutions. In this case, the solutions are x equals 2, because if I make x minus 2 equal to 0, then x equals 2. On this one is going to be x equals negative 5, and on this one is going to be x equals 5. So those are the three solutions for this polynomial. Let's try another example. So we're going to try now 4x to the 6 plus 4x to the 5th minus 24x to the 4th equals 0. Again, we're going to look at the common factor amongst all of these ones. The common factor is 4x to the 4th. So then inside of the parentheses is going to be x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. Why? Because 4x to the 4th times x squared is 4x to the 6th. 4x to the 4th times x is 4x to the 5th. And 4x to the 4th times negative 6 is negative 24x to the 4th. Again, that is a way that you can verify. Now we're going to factor this trinomial. So I'm looking for factors of negative 6. The sum is 1. So I know that one of them is going to be positive, the other one is going to be negative. That's the only way that I can have a negative number here. So it's going to be negative 2, positive 3. Because negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And negative 2 plus 3 is 1. And this equals 0. The similar situation to the first polynomial, the degree is 4. So that means that this represents x 4 times. And x equals 0. So this one is going to have a multiplicity of 4. Multiplicity of 4. Then we have x minus 2 equals 0, so the x equals 2. X plus 3 equals 0, so x equals negative 3. So I have 1, 2, plus 4, 6 solutions. The degree is 6, so that's what I was supposed to have. Let's try another example, and I do recommend that you pause the video and you try to work on this on your own. And then you can unpause the video and check your work to see if it is correct. So we have x to the 4th plus 25 equals 26x squared. Well, the first thing that I have to do is that I have to make this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 26x squared to both sides. And that's going to give me x to the 4th minus 26x squared plus 25 equals 0. So I'm going to factor this. I'm looking for factors of 25. The sum is negative 26. So that means that both factors have to be negative, because negative times negative is going to give me a positive. And both of them are going to start with x squared, because that is the only way that I can have the x to the 4th. So then it's going to be negative 25, negative 1. Because negative 25 times negative 1 gives me positive 25. And negative 25 minus 1 gives me negative 26. And we're going to make this equal to 0. Now if you notice, both of them are difference of squares. So how do I factor x squared minus 25? Well, it's going to be x plus 5, x minus 5. And how do I factor x squared minus 1? Well, it's going to be x plus 1, x minus 1. And again, we're going to make this equal to 0. And then we're going to solve for x for each one of them. So for this one, it's going to be x equals negative 5, x equals 5, x equals negative 1, and x equals 1. And those are the 4 different roots. My exponent was, or the degree of the polynomial is 4. I have 4 roots. So then that is the correct answer. We're going to try one more. We're going to try, let me go with this. We're going to try 3x to the 5th minus 6x to the 4th minus 72x to the power of 3 equals 0. So first I'm going to see if there is anything in common amongst all of them. And yes, every single one of these terms is divisible by 3, and each term has at least 3 x's. So the greatest common factor is 3x to the power of 3. So if I factor 3x cubed, then I'm going to end up with x squared minus 2x minus 72 divided by 3 is 24 equals 0. So then I have a trinomial that I can factor. So it's 3x to the power of 3 and I know one of them is going to be positive, the other one is going to be negative, and I know this because that is the only way that I can have a negative 24. So it is going to be positive 4, negative 6 equals 0. Because positive 4 times negative 6 is negative 24, and 4 minus 6 is negative 2. So then this represents 3 x's, so it's x equals 0 with a multiplicity of 3. And then we have x equals negative 4 and x equals 6. And that will be the answer.